Hi, my name is Ron Paul, and I had the good fortune to serve 12 terms as a U.S. Congressman. During that time, I tried to connect the dots and give you a clear picture of what's going on in our country. And I made life difficult for countless bureaucrats who built a career on concealing the truth. As far back as 2002, I warned Americans would become poorer and more dependent on the government to put food on the table, that the erosion of civil liberties would continue under the false flag of national security, and I spoke of an impending real estate meltdown and financial crisis. Some in Congress tried to laugh off these predictions, but despite their attacks, each of them has come true. Half of all Americans born today will wind up on food stamps at some point in their life. The government is hacking into our cell phones, our emails, and credit card records. The average American has only saved about $25,000 for retirement. And millions of investors and homeowners are still trying to get back to even after the 2008-2009 financial crisis. To the untrained eyes, these problems appear to be unique: poverty, a looming retirement crisis, civil unrest, and the cost of living spiraling out of control. But as you'll see, they all trace back to a single bad decision, something the politicians in Washington have attempted to sweep under the rug. And if I'm right, it will trigger the next great collapse far worse than what we experienced just a few years ago. That's why I've recorded this message, to explain the final prediction I made in Congress, what it means for you personally, and how you can protect yourself. I hope you can take the small sliver of time that remains for what it is, a gift and final chance to take matters into your own hands before it's too late. We're living through a strange time in history where the old rules, hard work, perseverance, and frugality don't seem to apply. On one hand, the average American standard of living has never been higher. We have more gizmos and gadgets than you can shake a stick at, and more choices on ways to feed, clothe, and entertain ourselves than ever before. Yet many Americans, no matter how hard they work, find it almost impossible to get ahead. And even the more fortunate among us are worried they may never be able to retire. Does this sound right to you? Well, for an increasing number of us, it's stark reality. And when I tell you what I believe is going to happen next, chances are you'll have a hard time believing me. That's okay. At the very least, you won't be caught off guard when events take a turn for the worst. Don't worry, you don't have to be an economist to understand how we got into this mess. All it takes is a look at your pocket change. You see, I was born in 1935 during the Great Depression, and I can still remember walking with my brothers to a local store. We each had 4 or 5 copper pennies and got a small bag full of candy. Today, the penny is so worthless, a lot of folks in government want to get rid of it. Indeed, the new zinc penny on the right can't even buy a penny. It costs the government nearly 2 cents to make one of them. The same thing is happening with the American nickel. Today, it costs the government almost 10 cents to make a 5-cent nickel. That's why the U.S. Mint lost more than $100 million on these coins last year. How has this happened? Well, it's a sign that my final prediction, the complete destruction of our currency and our monetary system, is about to come true. The warning signs are obvious if you know where to look. You'll probably notice how social unrest is on the rise, how college graduates have found themselves burdened with trillions of dollars in debt, how the cost of health care has continued to soar to the point where the average retiree must save $275,000 simply to cover their basic medical expenses, or how it costs 2 cents to make a penny and then 10 cents to make a nickel. These are signs that money as we know it is quickly losing its value and will soon cease to exist. This may sound like an outlandish claim, and it's something you won't hear at all in the mainstream press. It seems unimaginable to most people that the dollar could soon be rendered worthless. But reality paints a different picture. Since the government began its experiment with paper money, our currency has lost 95% of its value. In other words, what's used to cost $1 at the store now costs $21 and counting. Most Americans and nearly every politician I met in Washington don't realize that this is happening. but it's the root cause of why so many find it so hard to save for retirement. It's why pensions have become a relic of the past and why so many pension plans are underwater. It's why a single medical procedure or unexpected bill could tip millions of Americans into bankruptcy. It's why millions of mothers have been forced to work full-time when they'd rather stay at home with the kids. And why a full shopping cart at the grocery store can easily set you back $200 or $300. When I was in office, I tried to warn people, especially the elderly and those approaching retirement. I told them, look, you're always going to get a check from us. You're always going to collect Social Security, and the amount you receive will rise over time. But the question you have to ask, what's that money going to buy? If the price of electricity doubles, your check is not going to double. As the price of food continues to rise, the small increases in your check are not going to compensate for that. Just imagine paying $7 for a gallon of regular gasoline, $20 for a burrito, $11.50 for whole milk, $14 for a small tin of blueberries, $71,000 for a no-frills new car, $430 a month for cable and internet service, $718 a month for electricity. If things continue as they are, that's where prices are heading. But I fear we're on the edge of something much worse, an event that will cause the dollar to lose all its remaining value almost overnight. Congress is totally unprepared for such a crisis. You see, most people in Washington don't understand what money is or what determines its value. I'll never forget the time I was in a Financial Services Committee meeting not long ago, and one congressional member leaned over and asked me, "Isn't the U.S. dollar backed by gold?" True story. Amazing, isn't it, that some of the people making important decisions about our money don't even know that the U.S. has not been backed by gold or anything for that matter for more than 40 years. They're so busy giving away money and so happy to fund every new program and sustain a military presence in 140 countries that they've never stopped to think what will happen when the money goes bad. Just imagine what our world will look like when the food stamp program grinds to a halt, when grocery stores refuse to accept credit cards, when the people who run Medicare decide a once routine procedure is now too expensive and turn you away from the hospital, and the banks are forced to close and ATMs run dry. Get ready, it's coming. And really, we don't have to imagine what it might look like. We know because it's happened several times throughout history with the same result, disaster. In the Bible, you can find it under Genesis 47:15. So when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us bread. For why should we die in your presence? For the money has failed." It happened in Germany in the 1930s. Paper money was made so worthless by the central bank that people literally burned the currency as fuel to heat homes. It got so bad people went back to the barter system. They left the cities to go out into the countryside where they could search for food. In some places, the poverty and famine were so bad people had basically returned to the Stone Age. The same thing has happened in recent decades in Argentina, Ukraine, Venezuela, and Zimbabwe. And as we speak, it seems to be happening in France, Australia, Canada, Russia, and Japan. Over the past year, their currencies have collapsed anywhere from 17% to 50%. A 50% decline in a currency is the same as a 50% pay cut. Imagine how badly most Americans are struggling today. Then imagine what will happen when your money only buys half as much as it used to. We think we are immune to such a calamity, but I assure you we are not. The government has simply chosen to bury its head in the sand and pretend this is not happening. But mark my words, it's happened. In 1775, colonial leaders lacked the funds to fight the British, so they issued a new paper currency called the Continental, which quickly lost its value. George Washington famously noted, "A wagon load of currency will hardly purchase a wagon load of provisions." And in 1862, the government of the South issued a new paper currency, which quickly lost its value. By 1865, just 3 years later, a simple pair of shoes cost as much as $600. Each of our previous experiments with money backed by nothing has ended in tears, and now it's about to happen again. The fact that our government can simply order trillions of dollars to be printed out of thin air and distributed to anyone it likes should terrify us all. This is how it orchestrated the bailout of Wall Street. $400 billion to bail out Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. $280 billion to save Citigroup. $142 billion to Bank of America. Do you remember paying a special tax to save these firms? Of course not. If the government asked us to pay for all this out of our pockets, there would have been riots in the street. So instead, Congress asked the money factory, otherwise known as the Federal Reserve, to print up the cash. Trillions of dollars worth. So far, it's worked. The vast majority of Americans have no idea what's going on or how it is hurting them personally. We get paid in dollars. We spend them at the store. They seem to have real value, but this illusion is rapidly falling apart. How could the dollar be strong when roughly 75% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck with essentially zero savings, according to a recent study by Bankrate? How can things really be normal when the number of people on food stamps has basically doubled since 2009, and when half of all children born today will be on food stamps at some point in their life? And how can we possibly trust the dollar as a store of value when our country's money supply has increased by 400% since 2008? All just printed out of thin air. Look at this chart. It should scare the heck out of you. What has taken place over the past few years with the US dollar is something straight out of Weimar Germany or the last 20 years in Zimbabwe. I've been told on more than one occasion by high-ranking politicians the American people are too stupid, they'll never figure this out. Somehow, they think it's perfectly fine for you to lose 95% of your spending power. That you should be happy to get to keep 5% of what you earn over time. I disagree. That's why I've rushed to record this message. So far, every other prediction I made has come to pass. Now, my final prediction of a dollar collapse is about to become reality. I can't tell you the precise day or month it will happen. It could be any moment now. And one thing is for sure, you will never see an official warning from the government. The only question is, will you act before it's too late? You may think I'm being dramatic, but during my time as a congressman, I had the chance to talk with some of the most high-powered men and women in government about this very issue. Many of them agreed with my predictions and were much more candid with me than they ever were with the general public. I once rode alongside President Reagan on his helicopter Marine One, and the subject of what's happening to our money came up. Ron, the president told me, no great nation that abandoned the gold standard has remained a great nation. I've also confronted Alan Greenspan, the famous Federal Reserve chairman, on this subject. And he told me he still stands by his original thesis, which was published decades ago. He wrote, "In the absence of the gold standard, there is no way to protect savings from confiscation through inflation. There is no safe store of value." It's frustrating how both Reagan and Greenspan refused to admit the truth in public while they were in office, but I believe history will prove both of them correct. The government has fooled people for a while with paper money, but it's inevitable distrust in the money will be lost. It doesn't take a genius to see. The last 10 years have taught Americans to accept for the first time that their standard of living will fall short of their parents' and grandparents'. This has led to a growing sense of frustration and anger. More and more Americans have resorted to crime to compensate for losses they see as unfair. Inevitably, this crisis will lead to political instability and violence and financial collapse. Without a doubt, it's the most frightening thing happening in America. It's my most dire prediction to date. That's why it's important you take steps to prepare. I don't work in Congress anymore, but I know for certain that you can't wait for Washington to fix these problems. Real monetary reform will come only after a major currency crisis has already done its damage. You've got to take action personally. You must get the facts for yourself. You must learn the steps necessary to protect yourself and your family from the next inevitable financial crisis. You must become familiar with the warning signs and the government's predictable response to the crisis, which will likely make matters worse. There's new research I've read and enjoyed which explains exactly what's happening and, more importantly, what to do in plain English. It's published by my friends at Stansberry Research, and I believe it's the most honest and easy to understand source of knowledge available on the value and importance of money. What happens when a nation's money fails and what you can do to protect yourself. Today, they are making it available to anyone who requests a copy. I've personally taken some of the steps laid out in this document, and I recommend you do the same, or at least consider the consequences of doing nothing. My friends at Stansberry Research are not in the business of selling coins or bullion. They aren't looking to place your trades or do investment banking or anything like that. They're a trusted research company with more paid-up subscribers than Barron's or Investors Business Daily. If you care about your family and want to protect everything you've worked so hard to build, I recommend you request a copy today.
Today, you can get a limited edition copy of Porter Stansberry's new book. It's called America 2020, The Survival Blueprint. This 300-page blueprint details the exact steps you must take to prepare for America's looming currency crisis. This is a handbook, a blueprint, and an owner's manual for how to protect yourself and your family over the next 5 years. Many are referring to it as the most valuable book in America. Ken B. said, "Absolutely excellent book. I need to buy another 12 for my family and friends." Larry R. said, "I read it the first day I had it. It is a great book that explains our current situation simply and very accurately." Dr. Ron Paul likes this new book so much he wrote the foreword and said, "This book is a must-read. I don't know of anyone who has spent as much time and money as Porter Stansberry figuring out how to protect yourself and prosper in the years to come." One thing you need to keep in mind is the next big crisis in America is not going to be a banking crisis like we had in 2008. It's going to be a currency crisis that's much bigger, and government bailouts aren't going to do a thing to help. That's why in this blueprint, you'll learn the 4 most important steps you must take. Step number 1, get some of your money beyond the reach of the U.S. government. Most Americans don't know that there are 3 legal assets that you never, ever have to report to the U.S. government. Yes, you still have to pay taxes if you earn income on these assets or sell for a profit, but you legally do not have to tell the government or anyone else in the world that you own them. The benefit of this should be obvious. Nothing is more dangerous than a broke, desperate, and well-armed government. The less the government knows about where you have your money, the better. They will simply have a very hard time taking what they don't know you have. Every American needs to get some money beyond the government's reach. Porter Stansberry and many of his colleagues have used this strategy to put millions of dollars beyond the reach of the U.S. government. We recommend you do the same. Remember, it's 100% legal. The details on this strategy start on page 43 of the Survival Blueprint. Step 2, own the most lucrative assets in a time of crisis. There's no telling exactly how bad things are going to get as this crisis unfolds in America. There could be riots, protests, mobs, bank runs, even massive arrests for extended periods of time. Yes, you want to own hard assets, such as gold and silver, and more on that in a moment. But we have found through exhaustive studies that there's something even better than precious metals to own during a crisis. In short, there is one asset that you can own, now widely available in America, which should help protect you and your family from this chaos and could also make you a small fortune in the years to come. In fact, an index tracking this asset has absolutely crushed the stock market. Since 1992, it's returned well over 1,100% gains. Best of all, it provided these gains with almost no volatility. Just take a look at this chart. See how the black line goes straight up without any hiccups? Multi-millionaire investor Barton Biggs, who did an exhaustive research on which type of assets survive a crisis, said this particular asset has historically protected both your wealth and your life. During World War II, for example, when millions of families lost their entire life savings through inflation or government seizure, this was the one asset that enabled some families to survive and to protect, preserve, and grow their money. That's why it's an asset so many of the richest people in America have historically owned or are buying. I'm talking about the Walton family of Walmart fame, Bill Gates, Ted Turner, the Hilton family, Charles Schwab, Microsoft billionaire Paul Allen, the Hunt family of Texas oil fame, the Hearst family, the Ford family, and more. As multimillionaire Doug Casey says, it's the one thing you should own in the years to come. All the details on how to acquire the most valuable asset in a time of crisis, start on page 97 of the Survival Blueprint. You'll also learn about a one-of-a-kind silver investment that could conservatively pay you 1,000% in the years to come. What we're talking about here is a unique type of silver investment most people don't know about, which could eventually be the most profitable investment in America when the next crisis hits. This silver investment is truly one of a kind. There's nothing else like it in the world as far as we know. The details on this investment start on page 53. And that brings me to step number 3. Get out of dangerous assets and into those that will protect you. The one thing you must understand is that a currency crisis, like the one we're about to have in America, will cause a huge redistribution of wealth. In fact, it's already started. And you must have a clear understanding of which assets to own in the coming years and which to avoid. That's why in this Survival Blueprint, you'll learn how to get real hold-in-your-hand silver for less than $3. This is the absolute best way to buy silver in the world. And it's important to remember, silver is the ultimate currency in a real financial crisis, probably even better than gold. One multimillionaire investor says silver will ultimately reach more than $150. That's well over 700% higher than today's price. The world's 3 safest currencies. You can buy them right here in America without ever leaving home and without ever opening an offshore account or anything like that. 2 of the most dangerous investments for the next 5 years. Almost every American has one or both of these, but probably doesn't realize the danger. The secret paper currency used by the world's wealthiest people. This has nothing to do with the US dollar, the euro, the Swiss franc, or any other paper currency you've heard of before. It also has nothing to do with gold, silver, or any precious metals. But these certificates are among the most lucrative investments in the world and allow you to completely separate as much money as you want from the US banking system. The power of owning the world's trophy assets. There are a handful of one-of-a-kind assets on the planet. We'll show you 20 in all that enable you to own some of the best farmland, office properties, businesses, and mines in the world. Buy these assets when they are cheap. We'll show you exactly how cheap, and you can make enormous gains for many, many years. Details on this start on page 129. And that brings me to step 4. Learn the most important strategies for protecting your family. We don't think you need to go overboard with survival prepping, but if you implement a few strategies and techniques, you and your family will be able to survive no matter what comes our way. That's why in the Survival Blueprint, you'll learn, starting on page 107, the absolute #1 best way to get out of any jam during the next crisis. This is a technique you absolutely must prepare for and know how to use. Porter Stansberry learned this technique from one of the richest men in America and saw it put to use firsthand in South America. This strategy could save you or someone you love in the future. How one small neighborhood survived after Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. So many neighborhoods were destroyed and looted, but one used a radical technique to survive pretty much unscathed. What these folks did is extreme and may not be right for you, but depending on where you live, you might consider a version of this strategy for your own neighborhood. The key is to know about it and prepare in advance. Where to go during a crisis in the United States if you don't have a rural retreat and can't leave your state. Here's the safest place in just about every state. A simple way to organize all of your financial documents so you always know where everything is at a moment's notice. This is Porter Stansberry's personal technique. It's simple, it's easy, it's free, and it takes very little time. And there's so much more. Porter Stansberry's America 2020, The Survival Blueprint, is literally packed with dozens of other secrets, tips, ideas, and strategies that will help you survive and prosper in the years to come, including how to invest in the world's best hedge funds without ever paying any fees, how to safely and legally move as much money out of the U.S. and out of the U.S. dollar without having to report a single penny of it to the U.S. government. Yes, this is all completely legal, and it's a strategy used by many savvy Americans today. A unique private gold storage facility in America. You can find one of these operations in virtually every American city and town, and this keeps your assets out of the prying hands of banks and other financial institutions that are beholden to the government. The #1 way to get reliable income in America over the next decade. Forget bonds, CDs, and other risky investments that won't keep up with inflation. Here's the safest way to get all of the income you need for retirement. How to quickly open a foreign bank account online. No visit required. Not everyone needs or wants to do this, but if you do, we'll tell you exactly whom to get in touch with and what to say to do it as simply and as easily as possible. The ultimate wealth defense. Americans today are confused about what kinds of stocks, bonds, and other investments to own. So please, whatever you do, pay close attention to Chapter 10. Here's a plan that is cheap, easy to implement, and is the surest way we know of to have all the money you need for as long as you live, no matter what happens to the dollar or any other currency around the globe. And much, much more. Look, no one can tell you exactly when these life-changing events are coming to America. As Dr. Ron Paul said, we can only tell you that they are certain to occur, and that our country will look very, very different in 5 years than it does today. The facts are simple. We can't afford our debts. We can't stop printing money. And as a result, we're going to see a massive dollar crisis. The only question is, what will it take for you to recognize the crisis for what it is? How high will gold have to go? How many banks will have to be seized by the FDIC? How high do food prices have to soar, or healthcare costs? How many times will our government have to raise the debt ceiling? How much money do they have to continue borrowing just to keep the status quo? In other words, when will you finally realize there's a problem? I hope you'll act now. When the coming currency crisis hits a critical state, it'll happen very, very quickly. If our government suddenly finds itself unable to sell bonds at a reasonable price, the US dollar will collapse and become nearly worthless overnight. It's sad, but most people, even smart and successful people, will do nothing. They will continue to assume that tomorrow is pretty much going to be the same as today. Mark my words, as this currency crisis snowballs, these people are going to get wiped out. Please, don't let that happen to you and your family. Many Americans are still in serious denial about a major currency crisis in the United States, but this is natural. In the world of psychology, they call this the normalcy bias. The normalcy bias actually refers to our natural reactions when facing a crisis. It causes smart people to underestimate the possibility of a disaster and its effects. People believe that because something has never happened before, it never will. We're all guilty of it, it's just human nature. What's scary is the normalcy bias often results in making disastrous situations much worse than they would have been otherwise. For example, think about the Jewish populations of World War II. As Barton Biggs reported in his definitive book, Wealth, War, and Wisdom, by the end of 1935, 100,000 Jews had left Germany, but 450,000 still remained. Wealthy Jewish families kept thinking and hoping that the worst was over. As Biggs said, people almost always are too complacent because they cherish the illusion that when things start to go bad, they will have time to extricate themselves. It never works that way. Events move much faster than anyone expects. History usually doesn't evolve in a slow, orderly way. Often it leaps forward in disorderly, chaotic jumps. The point is, take these simple steps now while it's all safe, cheap, easy, and 100% legal. Don't wait. If you wait, it's very likely the situation will change so fast, it will be impossible for you to do anything about. The smartest money people in the world are taking steps to protect themselves. Bill Gross, for example, probably knows as much about currencies and debt as anyone in the world. For years, he ran the world's biggest bond fund. He was quoted by Bloomberg saying, "We've told all of our clients that if you only had one idea, one investment, it would be to buy an investment in a non-dollar currency. That should be on top of the list." And Jim Rogers, one of the world's most successful multimillionaire investors, is saying something similar. "I believe the dollar could lose its status as the world's reserve currency and medium of exchange, something that would lead to a huge decline in the standard of living for U.S. citizens like nothing we've seen in nearly a century." Even Warren Buffett, the world's most renowned investor with a net worth of $72 billion, has reduced his company's bond holdings to their lowest levels in more than a decade, according to Bloomberg News. What Bloomberg didn't mention is that Buffett also moved almost 70% of his remaining government fixed income investments into foreign currencies. Then in recent months, Buffett spent a fortune on a business that will probably see sales quadruple when a big crisis hits. I'm talking about America's #1 battery maker, Duracell. If the smartest money men in America are taking the necessary steps to protect themselves, shouldn't you? Yes, the ideas and solutions we're encouraging you to take might seem somewhat radical to you at first, perhaps even un-American. But as Dr. Ron Paul says, for a patriotic American, there is nothing radical about this approach at all. This is exactly how the founding fathers of our country thought and acted. We're recommending these steps because we love this country. There's still no better place to live, work, and raise a family on earth. We want to see as many people as possible emerge from the mess our government has put us in. And this is the best way possible for you to take personal responsibility to deal with the mess our government has put us in. You can give the 300-page America 2020, The Survival Blueprint, a look at absolutely no risk or obligation. Simply let me know you'd like to take a trial subscription to Porter Stansberry's monthly advisory reports called Stansberry's Investment Advisory, and we'll immediately send you an electronic copy and follow up shortly after with a printed hardback copy delivered to your front door. When you take a completely risk-free look at Porter Stansberry's work, you'll also receive 3 important research reports which will be critical to protecting and growing your wealth over the next 3 years. These 3 research reports include Research Report Number 1, the tax-free way to make 500% in America today. This research details a remarkable opportunity created entirely by government policies and by the government's massive money printing. It explains an interesting way just about anyone in America can make up to 500% gains tax-free in the years to come without touching stocks, bonds, or precious metals. Many smart investors have moved huge portions of their personal investment portfolios into this unique opportunity. Alternative investment expert Dr. Steve Sugarrood calls it the last great tax shelter in America. And this report shows you a simple formula that allows you to judge the quality of these investments very quickly. Again, this is totally separate from the stock and bond market and allows you to get a large chunk of your money out of the financial system. You'll receive Research Report Number 2, the Gold Investor's Manual. Most people know gold is a good investment to protect against what could happen in a crisis. As Ron Paul would say, gold is not money because government says it is money because the people have chosen to use it in a free country. The problem is most people don't have a clue about the best way to buy or store gold. That's why we created this 152-page manual. It reveals dozens of secrets about the gold industry, specifically the best ways to buy and sell and store your gold. It explains why some gold coins are better than others, how to buy gold with 0 dealer markup, how to easily and safely store some of your gold overseas very cheaply, where to hide it, the best ways to buy gold and to have it stored in a secure location in the United States or overseas, and more. Some experts believe gold could reach $5,000 an ounce or $6,000 an ounce in the next few years. Currency expert Jim Rickards says it could reach $7,000 per ounce. And the third research report you'll receive is the 100% secret. If you want the opportunity to make a lot of money during the coming crisis, one sure way to do it is to learn the intricacies of an unusual investment strategy that we've been teaching our readers to use for several years. You don't have to buy a single stock to begin using the strategy, and it has nothing to do with shorting. Learning this technique can be a game changer. In fact, you might never want to buy stocks the ordinary way ever again. One of our readers, named Tommy H., described the impact of learning this secret. He said this has saved his portfolio. In short, we'll show you a way to extract huge sums of cash from the market, potentially without ever owning a single stock. As Pulitzer Prize-winning author James Stewart said, "These payouts are so rich, I consulted a colleague to make sure they were real." Again, all 3 of these research reports and your copy of the 300-page hardback edition of America 2020, The Survival Blueprint, come at no extra charge when you try a 1-year subscription to Porter Stansberry's monthly research advisory letter called Stansberry's Investment Advisory. In his monthly research reports, Porter Stansberry and his team of 5 analysts, including a CPA, lawyer, and former hedge fund manager, regularly update you on America's currency crisis situation, the unintended consequences of the Fed's money printing, and the best ways to grow and protect your money over the next few years. Stansberry's Investment Advisory, which you'll receive on the first Friday of every month, is the perfect way to stay up to date on the currency crisis taking place in America right now. Porter and his team accurately predicted the collapse of GM, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac, Gannett Newspaper, and many others. They also accurately predicted the collapse of General Growth Properties, America's biggest mall owner, and more recently, the huge fall in oil prices long before anyone else we know of. Plus, Porter and his team have found some great ways to make a fortune as the government continues to try to bail out one failing industry after another. In Stansberry's Investment Advisory, Porter and his team will keep you up to date on what they're doing personally to protect themselves. They'll make sure you stay abreast of changes to the laws and government interventions. This currency crisis is a fast-moving situation with lots of moving parts. We think you'll benefit substantially from receiving our work over the next few years. And every day the markets are open, You'll also receive Porter's subscribers-only email called the Stansberry Digest. Here, Porter reports on all the work his firm is doing, the most interesting investment ideas, what they're researching now, and what they expect to happen in the months to come. So how much does this work cost, and how can you get started? Well, a one-year subscription, including everything mentioned here, normally costs $149 per year. That's what many others have paid. But right now, you can try Porter Stansberry's research for less than half the normal rate. You'll pay just $49.50 for an entire year. That's a 66% discount. Why so cheap? Well, we realize you've got to try Porter's work first to see if it's right for you. And that's why through this presentation, we're making it so cheap and essentially risk-free to try. You'll have the next 4 months to take a look at the research reports I've just described, plus the next 4 issues of Porter's advisory newsletter, and the next 4 months of his daily digest reports. If you decide for any reason within the first 4 months that his work is not right for you, just let us know and you can receive a full refund. And keep everything you've received so far, including your 300-page hardback copy of America 2020, The Survival Blueprint. In other words, by taking advantage of this offer, you are agreeing only to try Porter's work to see if you like it. Remember, by paying just $49.50 today, you'll receive the 300-page hardback copy of America 2020, The Survival Blueprint. You'll receive an electronic copy instantly and then a hard copy in the mail soon after. You'll also receive the research report, The Tax-Free Way to Make 500% in America Today, the research report, The Gold Investor's Manual, and the 100% Secret Research Report. You'll also receive a 1-year, 12 monthly issues delivered on the first Friday of each month subscription to Porter Stansberry's monthly analysis called Stansberry's Investment Advisory. Plus, Porter's daily, paid subscribers-only email update called the Digest. Please take the simple steps necessary to protect yourself and your family. At the very least, start a subscription to Porter's work, which gives you immediate access to his survival blueprint and all of the valuable reports you need to see. Keep your hardback copy of the survival blueprint nearby and print them out or save the other research reports so you have them forever. Then take 4 months to check out Porter's research. If you decide it doesn't make sense for you for any reason, just call our customer service group located in our Baltimore office. We've got a toll-free telephone line, and you can request a full refund for the money you paid in a matter of minutes. And even if you decide after 4 months that Porter's work is not right for you, no problem. You can still get a prorated refund for any time remaining on your subscription. And of course, you get to keep your copy of the 300-page hardback book, Our Compliments. To get started, simply click on the Order Now link below, which will take you to a secure order form. Your order will be processed immediately, and you'll have access to all of Porter Stansberry's work in a matter of minutes. Today, Porter still reads every note and email subscribers send in. The feedback Stansberry research has received over the years is simply incredible. For example,
my IRA has gone from a low of $315,000 to the present high of $952,000. I can only thank you for changing my life so much.
We even got an interesting note from a reader with the initials UR who says he made a small killing, enough to buy a nice-sized boat and a house in Mexico. Here's the photo he sent, and here's what he said.
We took delivery of her 3 weeks ago and are cruising the Bahamas. In October, we'll take her through the Panama Canal, over to the Pacific side, since I just bought a home in Mexico.
As Porter says, nothing makes us feel better than receiving notes like these. And today, Stansberry Research has literally tens of thousands of notes like these from our readers over the years, right here in our Baltimore headquarters. We've grown to be one of the largest research organizations of our kind in the world, and we have an A+ rating with the leading online reputation management website. You can't reach an A+ status without lots and lots of happy customers. Plus, we also have earned something else that no rating agency can ever bestow. To date, Stansberry Research has had more than 35,000 subscribers from around the globe tell us they like our work so much they want to receive it for life, the rest of their lives. We know of no other business in the financial industry that has anywhere near this number of happy lifetime subscribers. To us, this is the absolute strongest endorsement we could ever receive because it comes directly from the people who know us best, our customers. But here's the thing. Right now, we're extremely worried that a lot of our subscribers and many, many hardworking Americans are going to get caught totally by surprise when this crisis escalates. Get the facts. Learn how to protect yourself and your family. Don't let what's about to happen in America over the next few years catch you by surprise. We're not asking you to make any big commitment whatsoever. All we want you to do is take a few minutes to try our no-risk trial subscription. Just try our research at no risk or obligation to see if you like it. Take an immediate look at our 300-page America 2020 blueprint and the research reports described here, plus Stansberry's investment advisory, which will arrive on the first Friday of every month. All of this information is yours to keep, whether you choose to continue reading Porter's work or not. You're not risking even a penny to check everything out. Get started now by clicking the Order Now link below. This will take you to a secure order form where you'll have the chance to review everything once more before submitting your order.